It's a topic that feels somewhat mystical nowadays. Zombies. It implies that individuals who have died return without their souls, live as zombies, and eventually die again. We've seen lots of Bollywood movies about this. There's a twist to this. The trick hasn't been proven, but there's a scientist who explored it. He came up with a theory about how a person becomes a zombie and published it as a research paper. While some have accepted it, others haven't. Now, let's delve into the realm of these mystical zombies. The scene is set in a small town in Haiti in 1982. There's an elderly woman standing, buying vegetables. Her name is Angelina. The atmosphere is quite noisy. While the woman was selecting vegetables to buy, a man came and stood behind her. Then the shopkeeper warned them, "You have to be careful. There's a zombie coming behind you." In Haiti, people know what a zombie is, someone who has died and been revived by a black sorcerer. The sorcerer has control over the revived person's soul, and there's one of these zombies approaching. Angelina turned around and saw a man in ragged clothes standing there. Before attempting to run away, the woman heard a voice from the zombie calling her by name, "Angelina." Then they were shocked, because a zombie typically lacks recognition. A zombie is essentially an obedient entity, controlled solely by the mage. When the zombie called their name like that, they turned around in disbelief. When they turned around and looked at this zombie again, an idea struck them. One of their brothers had died in the past. The zombie carried the shadow and shape of that deceased brother. Then, as the zombie came closer, it said, "I am the person who died that day." The zombie continued, "But now I can recognize all of you." Then the sisters were overjoyed, and upon closer inspection, they realized it was indeed the same guy. When questioned in detail, he recounted everything about his sister and their house. This man had passed away years ago. They were buried. His grave lay in the cemetery of their church. Yet, here he was, standing in front of them. It was no great surprise to them, because it is possible to become a zombie like this, and the person who was a zombie came back. They took this man back home. When he reached home, he recognized the people there, and from his appearance, the people understood that he was the same man who had died years ago. The name of this zombie was Clairvius Narcisse. The fact that a person came back as a zombie was reported in local newspapers and the general media the next day. It became a topic of discussion among people. Then someone took notice, an anthropologist learning about it. The observant individual is a Colombian anthropologist settled in Canada named Edmund Wade Davis. He is delving into the subject, studying how zombies are created, and undertaking a research project named Project Zombies. Actually, if you ask about his job, he is an ethnobotanist. An ethnobotanist is a scientist who studies the relationship between plants and people in a specific area. They investigate how plants are used for medicine, witchcraft, and other purposes, exploring both the cultural and chemical aspects of these interactions. He was excited when he heard that a zombie had returned, because it aligned with the subject he was studying. However, getting a specimen alive is challenging. Zombies can't be acquired in that manner. A zombie came back to life. Then Davis approached this revived individual, as it was the focus of his study. He scrutinized the zombie meticulously. Let the story stand here. Now we understand what a zombie is. However, there is a history behind it. That country is called Benin in Africa. It was from that country that many people were brought to the islands of the Caribbean, including Haiti, for sugarcane cultivation and other jobs. They used to be in a country called Benin. Before the arrival of Christianity in Benin, its tribal people typically practiced their own indigenous beliefs. Even when Christianity came, most of them became Roman Catholics. Despite adopting Roman Catholicism, they did not abandon their earlier practices. People who blended their pre-existing practices and beliefs with the Catholic faith came to Haiti by ship for farming and other jobs. By the time they had matured as a community there, a fusion of the two faiths had occurred. This amalgamation is what we refer to as Haitian Voodoo. This cannot be called a distinct religious belief. Rather, it is a separate belief or practice within the religion. But as we see in the movies, Voodoo is not a widespread practice to be afraid of. The issue is not with the practice of Voodoo itself. Some other practitioners entered the scene. Who was behind this zombie phenomenon? Then Voodoo is said to have originated among the people who came from Africa when the faith they already held merged with the Catholic faith. This religion or way of life is called Voodoo. What is special about this is that there is an Almighty God. Because that God is supreme, it is not possible to see Him immediately or contact Him directly. Under Him are some minor gods. Their belief was that only by praying to these gods, our endeavors could be fulfilled. It is similar to the Almighty in the Catholic faith, and then the people we call saints. There are also those who pray to saints. Similar to that, they have an Almighty. Their Almighty is called Bon Dieu. Below that are some lesser deities called Loa, to whom one prays, because they cannot directly pray to the supreme God. What is unique about this is that for each aspect, there are its own minor deities under the supreme God, for love, for war, for education. Then for each aspect they satisfy its lesser gods associated with it and offer prayers for it. That's what Voodoo is all about. Voodoo is not such a messy system. But there were some people who were thinking in a different way and were continuing their African ways. They operated under the guise of a practice called Voodoo. They claimed to be practicing Voodoo, but their actions involved several other things, including black magic and such. They are known as Beckor. Wade Davis, the Canadian scientist we mentioned earlier, demonstrated that these sorcerers are behind the creation of zombies. It's not Voodoo that's the problem, it's the witches inside Voodoo who are the problem. Wade Davis learned about the practices of these witches, how they create zombies. It means they don't turn a living person into a zombie. That means someone dies at home. They are taken to the church and buried, and after some time, this person turns into a zombie, as we witness. They make these zombies do slave labor, leaving them to perform all the work in their houses or on the sugarcane plantation. The specialty of zombies is that if you provide them with food or something, they will work for free. This is because they have no soul. They function like machines. After becoming a zombie, that is when someone we know becomes a zombie. The people there do not even notice this zombie. According to their belief, the true soul is not in this body anymore. The right spirit is gone. It is now a body without a soul, running like a machine. But in the story told earlier, the woman named Angelina was shocked that the person standing in front of her had a soul. In other words, he recognized the woman. Therefore, he has a soul. This person named Clairvius is Angelina's brother. So what Clairvius has is a soul that is recognizable. That's why she took him back home. Then Clairvius told his story of what had happened. Davis, who came to study Clairvius, had written this in detail in 2 of his books. This is what is written in them. Clairvius had a property dispute with his elder brother. Then, this brother played a trick, intending that after Clairvius's death, the property would become available to him. The trick done by the brother for that involved approaching one of these sorcerers. They have a special type of medicine akin to an elixir in the form of a powder. Davis says he saw this powder, and he obtained a sample from someone else. When he studied that sample, he realized that in that powder, the dried meal of the pufferfish contains the deadly tetrodotoxin, parts of the frog Marinus, skin of the hyla tree frog, Osteopilus dominicensis. Human bone dust is also contained. Then his elder brother made a small wound on the body of Clairvius during some event, and applied the mixture given by the witch, that is, poisonous powder, to the wound. It is a poisonous powder that affects the nerves. Sometime later during the event, Clairvius fell unconscious. Then the people there took him to the nearby hospital. He was still unconscious when he reached there. In other words, the doctor examined him and declared he was dead. But he was not really dead. This is what Clairvius told Davis, that at that time he could see and hear everything, and he understood everything. He heard his sister crying, but he was unable to move his hand or leg or speak anything. But he knows everything. He says that he remembers very well that he was carried to the church in a coffin, and that he was taken to the cemetery and laid in the grave and covered. In fact, Clairvius was in a state of near-death coma, psychological trauma, after which the pit was covered, and by the time it was covered, he lost consciousness due to reduced oxygen. Later, when he regains consciousness, the sorcerer is standing in front of him. He is not in the pit. Then the sorcerer said to him, "I revived you, and now you are a zombie. From today, you are my slave. From now on, you have to do all the work I tell you." He could not react except to hear all this. As for what Wade Davis discovered, the powder that was previously applied to his wound is a neurotoxin. It affected the nerves, and the doctor declared him dead. After burying him, as soon as the people had dispersed, the elder brother informed the sorcerer. Quickly, the sorcerer and his team arrived, applying an antidote for the poison previously administered to the wound. Afterward, Clairvius regained consciousness. But before that, they had given him high doses of drugs. Since then, Clairvius has been receiving high doses of drugs every day from this witch and his team, so he has no sense of self. Clairvius believed that the sorcerer was right, that he was dead. The sorcerer had resurrected him, and he was a zombie. Thus, for a few years, Clairvius worked as a slave in the sugarcane plantation and performed all the household jobs. Some years later, this witch died. Until then, Clairvius and the other zombies there were being given high doses of drugs every day. When he died, they could not get the drugs they had been receiving from the next day onward. When that happened, some of the zombies there went crazy, others died, and few others escaped like Clairvius, meaning they regained their sense of self. Clairvius then regained consciousness and searched for his home. From there, he drifted and begged, finally reaching this town, and sought information from the people. That's when he realized that his brother, who had caused him trouble earlier, was dead. When he realized that, he gathered the courage to go back home. It is then that he understands that his sister has arrived in town. Clairvius visits her, reveals who he is, and she takes him back home. Having learned this story, Wade Davis delved into the subject and documented it in 2 books. According to Davis, A zombie is not magic. Instead, it is a strategy that people execute. In reality, zombies are not the result of magic. It was a misunderstanding among people. Instead, it was merely a trick, orchestrated by someone, leading to the misconception that it involved magic. That is, people are induced into unconsciousness by creating a wound and applying this poisonous substance. They are declared dead, pulled out of the grave within hours, and administered an antidote. Until their death, they are given high doses of drugs, which they never regain their self-sense. They come to believe themselves to be zombies. This is the secret of zombies discovered by Wade Davis. Some were in favor of it, and some were against it. They claim to have collected this powder that Davis mentions from another location. They tested it in the laboratory. However, it doesn't align with Davis's findings. While it is poisonous, applying it to a wound is unlikely to induce unconsciousness in people, in the manner described. Then there are those who support Davis's discovery, and there are those who oppose it. Anyway, Davis asserts that zombies are not the result of magic or sorcery. They are human creations. It means that one's mind is ruined and transformed into a zombie. Although Clairvius was physically a little unwell, he lived a normal life and later died in 1993. This Clairvius's story is the only documented zombie story we have. It is a narrative that sheds light on how one can become a zombie. We have encountered numerous frightening zombie tales in Hollywood movies. Perhaps we are discussing Davis's theory and what he said might indeed be occurring.